In the closing years of the 13th century, Scotland was a land torn between conquest and resistance. Its hills and valleys bore the scars of repeated campaigns by English kings who claimed dominion over the northern kingdom. Nobles were divided, towns had shifted allegiances, and the people had become accustomed to sudden sieges, raids, and the ever-present shadow of foreign rule. Amidst this turmoil, a figure emerged who would become a symbol of defiance: William Wallace. He was not a king, nor a lord of great inheritance, but a man born into the turbulence of his age, whose courage and cunning allowed him to strike blows against the mightiest army in Europe. By the late 1290s, Wallace had already become a hero of the Scottish resistance, leading forces that achieved improbable victories against better-equipped English troops. Yet, with every triumph came new dangers. England, humiliated and enraged, was determined to crush Wallace and reclaim its authority over Scotland. The stage was set for a confrontation that would not only define Wallace's life, but also alter the course of the First War of Scottish independence. The summer of 1298 brought the English army north once again. King Edward I, seasoned in both war and politics, marched with precision, his forces disciplined and enormous compared to the Scottish levies. Tens of thousands of infantry and knights, heavily armored and trained for battle, pressed into Scottish lands, leaving devastation in their wake. Villages were burned, fortresses reinforced, and word spread quickly to every corner of Scotland that the king himself sought Wallace's capture and the suppression of all resistance. Wallace understood the stakes. Scotland's survival, fragile as it was, depended on the outcome of the coming clash, and for the first time, he would face an English army vastly superior in size, training, and equipment. What followed would become a tale of courage, strategy, misfortune, and ultimately a brutal defeat that would resonate for centuries. As autumn approached, Wallace began to consolidate his forces. He was no stranger to leading an army composed of men of every class: peasants, local militia, and disaffected nobles. These were men driven not by pay, but by loyalty to their homeland, their families, and their freedom. They were lightly armored, agile, and familiar with the land. Yet their numbers could not match the disciplined ranks of Edward's army, which included thousands of heavy cavalry, archers, and professional soldiers hardened by years of campaigning in Wales and France. Wallace's strategy relied on terrain and mobility. He sought to draw the English into narrow fields where their numbers would count for less, where long bows could be countered, and where cavalry would be forced into choke points. His intelligence network scouted English positions, tracked movements, and relayed warnings of approaching forces. Yet, as the English marched relentlessly north, the land began to betray him. The open fields near Falkirk, bordered by thick woods and marshy areas, offered few natural advantages. Wallace knew that a decisive battle in such conditions would be a gamble, and yet retreating risked demoralizing his followers and conceding all initiative to Edward. Edward's advance was marked by strict discipline. Supply lines were carefully maintained, sieges bypassed when inconvenient, and every step forward calculated to minimize resistance while maximizing psychological pressure. As the English approached, their reputation alone caused many Scottish nobles to hesitate, their loyalties shifting like the wind. Wallace, aware of these fractures, attempted to unify his army with speeches and councils of war, appealing to honor, national pride, and the sacred duty to defend Scotland. Despite his charisma and tactical acumen, Wallace faced an existential problem. The English army outnumbered him at nearly 4-1. It was not just a battle for survival. It was a test of leadership, strategy, and the limits of courage in the face of overwhelming odds. The fields near Falkirk were deceptively simple. To the untrained eye, they seemed open, easy ground for cavalry to deploy. But mud, uneven terrain, and natural watercourses turned them into hazards. Wallace arranged his men in traditional Scottish formations, dense blocks of spearmen bristling with pikes, interspersed with light infantry to harass the enemy and maintain flexibility. Archers were positioned on the flanks where possible, tasked with slowing cavalry charges, though their effectiveness would be limited by the approaching English forces. Edward surveyed the terrain with a king's eye for strategy. He positioned his longbowmen at the front, using the narrow corridors between marshes to funnel the Scottish formations into predictable paths. Heavy cavalry was stationed in the rear, poised to charge once the enemy lines began to falter. Every English move was calculated to exploit Wallace's reliance on close formations and the limitations of lightly armored troops. The king's experience and meticulous planning had turned the field into a trap, one that would soon snap shut with devastating efficiency. For Wallace, the moment demanded boldness. He sent his spearmen forward, ordering skirmishes to probe weaknesses in the English advance. Signals were passed across the line, and messengers ran to coordinate movements. Yet the sheer size of Edward's army, combined with superior training and equipment, began to erode the Scots' advantage. Archers could not gain effective range. Pike formations struggled in mud, and the first clashes with English cavalry exposed the vulnerability of men unprotected by plate armor. Despite this, Wallace's leadership kept morale intact for the first hours of engagement. His presence at the front inspired troops, rallied wavering units, and maintained cohesion. It was a display of courage that would become legendary, though even heroism could not overcome the growing tide of numerical and tactical disadvantage. Edward launched his first major assault in mid-morning. Longbow opened fire, unleashing a torrent of arrows that darkened the skis and rattled shields. Scottish formations attempted to close ranks, bracing for impact, but the effect was devastating. Horses were struck down, archers dismounted, and pike units were forced to move more slowly through churned earth. For every arrow that struck a Scottish soldier, the battlefield became more chaotic, less coordinated, and increasingly lethal. The English heavy cavalry pressed forward once the longbows had softened the lines. Mounted knights, polished and confident, crashed into the Scottish pike blocks. Wallace's spearmen held firm at first, absorbing the shock. But as more English troops poured onto the field, pressure mounted. Mud and fallen soldiers slowed Scottish counterattacks. Men were trampled, shields shattered, and morale began to waver. Each charge forced Wallace to adapt, redirecting units, reinforcing flanks, and attempting to hold gaps in the line. Meanwhile, the Scottish archers on the flanks were forced into defensive positions, unable to exploit mobility. Their attempts to flank the English were repelled by superior numbers and coordinated counterattacks. The field, once a potential equalizer, had become a trap in which the English could deploy their full tactical arsenal with deadly effect. The struggle for every foot of ground became brutal and exhausting, testing the limits of human endurance. Amid the chaos, William Wallace remained at the forefront. He was a symbol of defiance, rallying troops even as their ranks thinned. Chroniclers recount his bravery, moving from unit to unit, encouraging men, wielding weapons himself, and attempting to inspire hope in a rapidly deteriorating situation. He faced the English knights directly, standing against charges that would have crushed lesser men. His presence slowed panic and lent cohesion to units that might otherwise have fled. Yet even Wallace's courage could not alter the strategic reality. English discipline and superior positioning began to turn the tide irrevocably. Each Scottish counterattack was met with massed archers, repeated cavalry charges, and crushing weight of numbers. Units that held for minutes now collapsed in seconds, and the battlefield increasingly resembled a nightmare. Mud, blood, steel, and desperate cries echoing across the fields of Falkirk. By late afternoon, the Scots were being forced into retreat, and Wallace recognized the impossibility of a decisive victory. His army, though valiant, had been outmatched in every measurable sense. The time for strategy had ended. Survival became the immediate concern. When the dust settled, the Scottish army lay shattered, thousands had fallen. Noblemen and common soldiers alike were casualties of misfortune, discipline, and superior English tactics. Edward's forces had not only won the field, but had delivered a psychological blow to the Scottish cause, demonstrating the full weight of English military power. William Wallace survived the battle, but fled the field, marking a turning point in his life. His vision of a liberated Scotland remained intact, but the reality of English dominance had never been clearer. Falkirk became a moment of bitter lesson. Heroism alone could not overcome strategic disadvantage, poor terrain, and overwhelming enemy numbers. The Scottish resistance would continue, but Wallace's fall on that day marked the end of his immediate prominence and foreshadowed his eventual capture and execution years later. Falkirk also had far-reaching consequences beyond the battlefield. It exposed divisions within the Scottish nobility, underscored the importance of professional armies, and highlighted the deadly efficiency of the English longbow and cavalry. The psychological effect reverberated through Europe, influencing alliances, strategies, and perceptions of both Scottish courage and English military dominance. The Battle of Falkirk stands as one of the most studied confrontations of the First War of Scottish independence. It exemplifies the interplay between leadership strategy, technology, and terrain in medieval warfare. William Wallace, though defeated, remained an enduring symbol of resistance, his courage immortalized in Scottish memory and legend. Falkirk reminds us that even the bravest commanders face limits imposed by numbers, resources, and environment. It illustrates the brutal realities of war, how valor can be overshadowed by preparation, how heroism can be tempered by circumstance, and how the tides of history can shift in a single day. For Scotland, it was a lesson in resilience. For Edward I, it was a demonstration of the disciplined, terrifying power of the English crown. And for the world, it was the making of a story that would endure across centuries: the fall of William Wallace.